Snow fell harder than the weather report had promised, piling against the glass doors of the corporate building as Emily stepped outside with a cardboard box pressed to her chest. Her breath trembled in the icy air. She had been fired so fast, so cold, so unfair, she still wasn't sure it had truly happened. One mistake in a report she hadn't even touched, and the blame had landed on her without hesitation. Her keycard was disabled before she even reached the elevator. Her bank account was nearly empty, and the text from her landlord had arrived 10 minutes later. Rent is past due. You need to be out before Christmas. Christmas was 2 days away. Emily stood on the sidewalk, snowflakes melting in her hair, wondering how everything had collapsed so brutally at once. That was when headlights cut across the street bright and sharp through the storm. A sleek black car pulled up beside her. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a tailored coat, face unreadable under the falling snow. He handed her an envelope. Miss Hart, Emily stiffened. Yes, my employer has an offer for you. He nodded at the envelope. If you agree to play the role of Alexander Hale's wife for 30 days, you will be compensated generously. Emily blinked, almost laughing. This is a joke. It is not, the man said calmly. He opened the envelope just enough for her to see the contract, the payment amount that made her breath stop, and a photograph of a mansion lit in quiet golden lights. Why me, she whispered. Because Mr. Hale needs someone who won't fall in love, he replied. And you seem suitable. Emily didn't know this contract would change her life forever. The ride to Alexander Hale's estate was silent except for the rumble of tires cutting through the snow. Emily clutched the contract on her lap, still unsure if she had made the most reckless decision of her life or the only one she could afford to make. The car stopped before a sprawling mansion draped in elegant Christmas lights, beautiful yet somehow devoid of warmth. Inside, the air was still, almost too still. The staff moved quietly, almost fearfully, as if any noise might disturb something fragile. Emily felt an unfamiliar pressure in her chest. Then she saw him. Alexander Hale stood at the base of the staircase, hands in his pockets, dark hair falling neatly over his forehead. He was impossibly handsome in a sharp, cold way, eyes of the color of frost, expression carved from stone. He glanced at her just once and said, "You're late." Emily swallowed hard. There was a snowstorm. That's not my concern. His voice was low-clipped and almost bored. Come with me. He led her into a private study lit only by a fireplace. The flames reflected in his eyes without warming them. Emily tried not to stare at the way his presence filled the room. These are the rules, he said, opening the contract to the marked section. You will follow all of them. He read them aloud, each word precise. 1. You do not fall in love. 2. You do not ask about my personal life. 3. You do not enter my office under any circumstances. 4. You maintain appropriate distance unless public appearances require otherwise. 5. You protect my public image. Emily frowned. These are strict. They are necessary. His gaze flicked toward her necklace. Where did you get that? She touched the silver pendant instinctively. My mother's. Why? For the first time, something flickered in his expression, an emotion too quick to identify. Shock, fear, recognition. It's nothing. He straightened, shutting the contract. Your room is upstairs. Emily followed him through dim corridors that felt more like a museum than a home. Portraits lined the walls, Alexander in various corporate settings, never smiling. Not a single family photo, not a single holiday memory. At the staircase landing, she noticed a door on the right, slightly open. Warm light glowed from inside. Alexander saw her staring, and his voice sharpened. That room stays closed, always. Emily nodded quickly, but a cold shiver ran through her. Why would he leave a forbidden door open later alone in her room? She unpacked her meager suitcase onto a dresser that looked too expensive to touch. Snow tapped softly against the window. She should have felt relieved, safe even. She had a roof over her head, money coming, a chance to get her life back. But something about this house felt wrong. Heavy, haunted. As she lay down, she heard Alexander's voice faintly through the floorboards below, speaking into a phone tense and low. No, I won't let another Christmas fall apart. Not again. Emily's eyes snapped open in the dark. What had happened to him on Christmas before, And why did it feel like she had just stepped into the center of it? Emily woke to a house so silent it felt suspended in time. The snowstorm had eased, but the air inside the mansion was still heavy, as though sound itself was unwelcome. She slipped on a sweater and stepped into the corridor, her breath catching when she noticed a soft glow spilling from the crack of Alexander's forbidden office door. He had gone upstairs hours ago. There shouldn't be a light on. There shouldn't be anyone in there. Before she could take another step toward it, Lucas appeared from around the corner, carrying a tray of folders. "Breakfast will be served in 20 minutes, he said quickly, his eyes landing on the thin beam of light behind her. "It's best if you don't stand near that door." Emily hesitated. "Why is it open?" "It isn't." Lucas stepped past her and shut the door without looking inside. It was never open, but it had been. Emily knew it. The soft glow still lingered behind her eyes as Lucas walked away. The dining room looked like it belonged to a historic estate, long table, polished wood, silver cutlery, and yet it felt as hospitable as a courtroom. Emily was halfway through her toast when Lucas placed a folder in front of her. "You'll attend the Hale Foundation Winter Gala with Mr. Hale tonight," he said. "Your names have been listed on the guest roster." Emily blinked. "Listed? But I only signed the contract last night." Lucas said nothing. "So he prepared this before he even met me?" she asked quietly. Lucas shrugged, which in his language meant yes. Emily's stomach tightened. She didn't know what unsettled her more, the idea that Alexander had chosen her intentionally or that she might have been part of some plan she didn't understand. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Alexander entered, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. His expression was unreadable as always, but he paused upon seeing Emily dressed for the morning. "Lucas," he said, eyes never leaving her, "make sure she's given appropriate attire for tonight." Emily straightened. "I can pick something myself." Alexander didn't blink. "That's unlikely." His cold certainty jabbed at her pride. But before she could respond, a buzzing phone interrupted the tension. Alexander stepped away to answer, lowering his voice. "No. The deadline is the 25th. I won't repeat myself." His tone sharpened. "I said it won't happen again." Emily stared at her plate, pretending not to hear. When she looked up, Alexander was watching her with something like suspicion or fear. He ended the call abruptly. "Stay out of things that don't concern you. I'm not trying to just do what you agreed to," he cut in, turning away. But his voice was too tight, too raw for someone who supposedly felt nothing. Later that afternoon, Emily wandered into the kitchen for water, her mind still replaying his cryptic phone call. As she filled a glass, the sudden sound of shattering ceramic made her jump. The glass slipped from her hand and broke on the floor. Before she could blink, Alexander appeared in the doorway, as though drawn by instinct. He knelt beside her and reached for the shards at the same time she did. Their hands brushed just briefly. His skin was ice cold. Not cool. Cold. Emily stared at the back of his hand, pale as the snow outside. "Don't touch me," Alexander said, sharply pulling his hand away like he'd been burned. But he wasn't angry. He looked shaken. I'm sorry," she stammered. He stood without another word and walked out, shoulders tense, jaw clenched. As she cleaned up, the older housekeeper approached her with soft steps. "The young master is not easy, but he isn't cruel." She lowered her voice. "He carries wounds from a Christmas long ago. Wounds that never healed." Emily finished sweeping the broken glass, her chest tightening. "What happened to him?" The housekeeper shook her head gently. "Not for me to say, but tread carefully. His heart is fragile." Emily nearly laughed. Alexander, with all his anger and coldness, fragile? It seemed absurd, and yet something inside her whispered it was true. As the evening crept in, she stepped into the hallway again and froze. The forbidden door was slightly open once more, just like in the morning. A sliver of warm light painted the floor. She took a hesitant step, then another, her pulse picking up. Before she reached it, the door slammed shut. Emily gasped, and behind her, Alexander's voice cut through the air like a blade. "That room is off limits." She turned to face him. His expression was hard, but his eyes, they were wide, almost frightened. "I wasn't going in," Emily said quietly. "Good," he replied, "because nothing in that room concerns you." Emily held his gaze. Then why does it scare you so much? He flinched a tiny involuntary movement, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. Do not test my rules. I'm not, she whispered. I just want to understand. You don't need to, he snapped, but the anger dissolved too quickly, leaving only hollow exhaustion behind. He walked away without looking back. That night, as Emily lay in bed, she heard a faint metallic clink outside her door. She sat up, heart pounding, and opened it. A small silver key lay on the floor. The hallway was empty. Her gaze drifted to the forbidden door at the opposite end. Still closed, still dark. But then she heard Alexander's voice muffled through the wood. I'm sorry, he whispered to someone who wasn't there. I already failed once. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she stepped backward into her room, closing the door slowly, her heart racing with fear, curiosity, and a strange ache she didn't yet understand. Something was haunting Alexander Hale, and somehow she was walking straight into the center of it. Emily stood at the kitchen counter the next morning, sipping warm tea and trying to shake off the strange feeling that had settled over her since last night. She barely had time to breathe before Lucas appeared with a neatly stacked folder and placed it on the marble island. You'll need these, he said. Emily opened the folder and her jaw dropped. It was a detailed schedule for the Hale Foundation Winter Gala happening that evening, complete with her name printed in elegant serif font beside Alexander's. But I only arrived yesterday, she whispered. How is my name already on the guest list? Lucas didn't blink. Mr. Hale prepares in advance. In advance, Emily repeated quietly, staring at her own name like it didn't belong to her. He planned to bring a wife before he even met me. Lucas gave the faintest nod before turning away, leaving her alone with the folder and a growing sense that she had been chosen for this role long before she realized. The stylist arrived shortly after noon. She brought racks of evening gowns, shimmering fabrics draped over gold hangers, far too luxurious for someone who'd lost her job less than 48 hours earlier. Emily felt like an imposter as the stylist circled her, assessing her with professional precision. You'll look stunning in emerald, she said, holding up a gown that sparkled under the chandelier. Mr. Hale has excellent taste. He picked the dress, Emily asked, startled. Not directly, the stylist replied, but he gave guidelines. Emily didn't want to know what those guidelines were. When she finally stepped into the dress, it felt like wearing a different life, one she wasn't sure she deserved. As she adjusted the fabric over her waist, she felt eyes on her. She turned. Alexander stood in the doorway. He wasn't dressed for the event yet, but even in a black shirt and slacks, he looked like he owned the world. His gaze held on her for 1 second too long, something flickering beneath the ice. Then he looked away sharply. Tell Lucas we'll leave at 7, he said, and vanished before she could speak. Before the gala, they practiced their entrance in the foyer. Lucas demonstrated how she should stand beside Alexander, how she should hold his arm, how she should smile subtly without looking timid. Emily tried her best, but the unfamiliar heels wobbled beneath her. She stumbled, but a strong hand caught her. Alexander. He steadied her before she hit the floor, his grip firm and cold against her skin. For a moment their faces were inches apart. Emily's pulse jumped. He stepped back quickly as if realizing he'd broken some invisible line. Be careful, he said, tone clipped. Emily swallowed. Sorry. He didn't respond. He looked like he wanted to. Something had shifted in his eyes, but he turned away too fast to decipher it. The gala hall shimmered with chandeliers and metallic decorations that glowed against the winter night. Paparazzi swarmed outside, flashes exploding like silver fireworks. When Alexander stepped out of the sleek black car and extended a hand to her, Emily hesitated only a moment before placing hers in his. His hand was cold, but he didn't let go. Walking beside him felt surreal, his arm firm under her palm, his posture regal and impenetrable. People turned to look. Cameras clicked wildly. Emily forced herself to smile. Relax, Alexander murmured it without looking at her. It's just a room full of people who talk too much and take too many photos, she whispered back. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Inside, the music played low and elegant. Alexander moved through the crowd like he owned it, acknowledging greetings with polite nods. Emily followed his lead, the perfect decorative wife, a role she didn't quite know how to play. A woman in a silver dress approached them. older, poised with a sharp gaze that lingered on Emily a moment too long. So she said to Alexander, "You finally decided to move on." Alexander tensed. "This is Emily." The woman's eyes softened with something like pity. "You look like her," she said quietly to Emily. "Almost exactly." Emily's breath hitched. Like who? But the woman slipped away before she could ask more. Alexander's jaw tightened as he pulled Emily toward another part of the room. "Who was she talking about?" Emily asked. "No one," he said too fast. She stared at him. He refused to look back. A reporter approached with a camera crew. "Mr. Hale, could we get a statement? People are calling this your first public appearance with a partner." And "No," Alexander said sharply, but the reporter persisted. "Is tonight special because it marks 3 years since Emily felt Alexander's grip tighten painfully?" His eyes went dark. She gently squeezed his hand, grounding him. He inhaled shakily. She smiled at the reporter. "We're happy to support the foundation tonight. That's all." The reporter backed off. Alexander looked at Emily with something raw gratitude or surprise she couldn't tell. Their fingers remained entwined long after the reporter left. Alexander didn't pull away this time. When they returned home, Alexander walked ahead without a word. Emily stepped into the foyer, still catching her breath from the evening's chaos. She gathered the hem of her gown and climbed the stairs. Halfway up, she froze. Alexander was in the hallway on the landing, speaking quietly to Lucas. "She looks too much like her," he whispered. "I'm not sure I can go through this again." Emily's heart dropped. Her, the ghost haunting this mansion, the shadow she kept bumping into without ever seeing. She turned, the corner slipped unnoticed into her room, and pressed a hand over her racing heart. Something in this house was broken, and Alexander Hale was breaking with it. The headline glared up at her from the glossy front page the moment she stepped into the dining room. Alexander tossed the newspaper onto the table as if the paper itself offended him. "Explain this," he said. Emily picked it up with trembling fingers. A photo from the gala, her smiling politely at Noah, the senior financial director, cropped tightly to make it look intimate. The headline twisted the moment even further. "The millionaire's new wife gets too close." I was just talking to him," she stammered. Alexander's eyes were ice. "It didn't look like that." Her frustration snapped. "What exactly didn't look like that? Me standing beside someone who wasn't you for 10 seconds. You were smiling," he fired back. "That's what people do at galas, Alexander." His jaw clenched. He seemed startled by his own reaction, as though he hadn't planned to be jealous, hadn't expected to feel anything at all. But the emotion was there, sharp, unguarded, and utterly out of place on his usually impenetrable face. Emily stared at him. "Are you?" She struggled to say it. "Are you jealous?" Alexander stepped back like she'd shoved him. "Don't be ridiculous." But he couldn't look her in the eyes. He didn't calm down. Emily found him pacing in his office a moment later. Hands locked behind his back, shoulders tense. Papers lay scattered across his desk like he'd been tossing them aside in frustration. "You agreed to follow the rules," he said without turning around. "You agreed to protect my public image." "I did nothing wrong," Emily replied, heat rising in her chest. "You're the one acting like what," he snapped. "Like a husband," she whispered. Silence, thick and suffocating. Alexander's breath hitched almost imperceptibly. "I'm not your husband," he said finally, but the words sounded like a lie he was forcing himself to believe. The rest of the day dragged in tense quiet. Emily thought about retreating to her room, but the mansion's emptiness suffocated her. She wandered into the library, running her fingers along books that looked untouched. She stopped at the fireplace mantel. A photo frame sat there dusty as if no one had dared touch it in years. It showed Alexander from 3 Christmases ago, standing before a glittering tree. Beside him was a woman whose face had been cut from the photo entirely. The edges of the cut were jagged, done in anger or desperation. Emily's heart panged. "Who are you?" she whispered. "You shouldn't look at that." Alexander's voice came from behind her. She flinched, turning slowly. His expression was unreadable, but something vulnerable flickered beneath it. Emily swallowed. "She was important to you." He took the photo frame from her hands and placed it face down on the mantel. "Don't ask about her, ever." "But the staff said," he spun toward her. "I don't care what they said." His voice cracked slightly. Her story is not yours to carry. Emily stepped closer, searching his face. But it's still hurting you, even now. Alexander looked away. Later, Noah arrived with a stack of financial reports. He greeted Emily with a warm smile, and she returned it politely. Alexander walked in mid-conversation and froze. His expression darkened instantly. Noah, you're done here. Noah blinked. I have the quarterly numbers. I said you're done. Alexander cut him off and dismissed him with a cold flick of his eyes. When Noah left, Emily folded her arms. That was rude. That was necessary. He stepped closer, eyes stormy. I don't want him near you. Emily's jaw tightened. Why? Because I smiled at him. Because he wants something from you, Alexander growled. Oh, and you don't... His breath faltered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distance between them shrank until she could feel the tension humming in the air. You're making this too complicated, he finally said. Just follow the rules. You mean your rules, Emily whispered. That evening, she passed one of the housekeepers in the hall. The elderly woman's voice softened when she spoke. Mr. Hale wasn't always like this, she said. He used to laugh. He used to decorate the whole house for Christmas. Her expression dimmed until she disappeared. Emily's chest tightened. What happened to her, no one knows. One night she was here, the next gone. Emily felt her heartbeat echo in the silent hallway. Gone. Just gone. Please be careful, dear, the woman added. His heart hasn't mended. Emily found Alexander again in the study later that evening, the same photo frame clutched loosely in his hand. She approached cautiously. Why do you keep the picture if it hurts to look at it? She asked softly. He didn't face her. Because I deserve the reminder. For what? For failing her. Emily stepped closer. You didn't tell me what really happened. Alexander's knuckles whitened around the frame. You don't need to know, but I want to understand. He finally looked at her. There was a storm behind his eyes. Regret, grief, fear. Understanding won't change anything, he said quietly. And I don't want you tangled in the wreckage of my past. Emily opened her mouth to speak again, but he turned away. That's enough for tonight. His voice was final but trembling. Hours later, when she returned to her room, something slipped from the hem of her dress, a small card, old and creased. She must have accidentally brushed it loose while she was near the fireplace. Curiosity pulled her downward. She lifted the card, a Christmas message, the handwriting feminine looping. Alex, please don't blame yourself. No matter what happens, you were the best thing in my life. Emily's breath caught. The missing woman, Lydia. She imagined Alexander reading this years ago, imagined him holding on to guilt that wasn't his to bear. She closed her eyes, her heart aching with something she couldn't explain. Alexander, she whispered into the darkness, what really happened to you? Snow pressed gently against the tall windows as Emily wandered the silent halls that night, unable to sleep. The mansion felt different in darkness, softer, quieter, as if the walls finally let themselves breathe. She reached the staircase when a sound drifted upward, faint but unmistakable. Piano. A slow, aching melody floated through the air, each note heavy with something like grief. It didn't match the Alexander she knew, the man who barked orders and closed himself off like a fortress. This sound belonged to someone wounded, someone human. Compelled, Emily moved downstairs. In the dim glow of a single lamp, Alexander sat at the grand piano. His fingers moved with an elegance she never expected, creating a melody that seemed to unravel him with every measure. His shoulders shivered slightly, though the room wasn't cold. Emily froze at the bottom of the stairs, afraid to disrupt something so private. But he noticed. His fingers stilled on the keys. Listening from the shadows again, he said without turning. I wasn't trying to, she replied softly. I heard the music. It's nothing. Alexander rose, abruptly closing the piano as though it embarrassed him. A habit I shouldn't indulge. It didn't sound like nothing. She stepped closer. It sounded like pain. He finally looked at her, and for the briefest moment, the mask slipped. I once promised someone I'd play this on Christmas morning, he said. I failed her long before morning came. Emily swallowed the meaning, sinking deep. Lydia. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. I don't want to talk about her, he whispered. Emily nodded, but the room was thick with unspoken things. notes, unfinished emotions buried alive. The next morning, the staff began decorating the house for Christmas. Emily joined them, eager to help. Garland draped over the banister, the scent of pine filling the air, soft music playing in the background. She opened a worn box of ornaments, lifting each one carefully. Then she found it. A glass ornament cracked clean down the center. Etched across the surface were the initials A and L, elegant and intertwined. Emily didn't need to ask who L was. The housekeeper hurried over, face paling, when she saw the ornament in Emily's hand. "Oh dear, don't let him see that. It belonged to Lydia," Emily asked. The woman nodded slowly. Their first Christmas together. He bought it in Vienna. She adored it. Emily stared at the ornament a long moment before placing it back gently. It felt like holding a piece of someone else's heartbreak. While cleaning the living room, she bent to pick up a throw blanket and spotted a tiny silver glint beneath the couch. A key, the same kind she'd found outside her door days ago. Her pulse jumped. She slid the key into her pocket quickly, unsure what it meant, but knowing it mattered. She turned and nearly collided with Alexander. He studied her silently. His eyes weren't cold this time, just conflicted, maybe even tired. "You're quiet today," he said. "So are you," she replied. He exhaled the air, leaving him like something heavy. "Emily, last night, forget what you heard. It's better if you don't try to fix things that have nothing to do with you." She looked at him carefully. "Does it look like nothing to you?" His expression faltered. Emily didn't push him, but she didn't look away either. After a long moment, Alexander murmured, "Don't disappear. Not like her." Her breath caught. "Who?" Emily asked, though she knew. He shut his eyes, briefly pained. "Never mind." That evening after dinner, she walked through the dim corridor and felt something tugging at her attention, the forbidden room. She had the key now, and the memory of Alexander's piano still clung to her. She approached the door, heart thudding. Her hand trembled as she slid the key into the lock. The door clicked open. A cold breath of air escaped the room as if it had been waiting. Emily stepped inside. The room was a time capsule. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, its needles dry and brittle. Strings of lights hung lifeless around it. Wrapped gifts sat neatly beneath the tree untouched. A faint scent of old pine lingered, but the part that broke her heart was the wall. Dozens of photographs, Alexander and a blonde woman, Lydia, smiling, laughing, embracing. A life that looked warm, full, happy. Emily moved closer, her fingers brushing the edge of a photo. Lydia had gentle eyes and a bright smile. She was everything Emily imagined someone would need to melt Alexander's ice. She continued exploring, noticing a small gift box on a chair. She lifted the lid. Inside was a necklace. Her breath hitched. It was identical to her own, same shape, same metal, except for a different gemstone. Why would Lydia own something like hers, and why had her own mother bought the matching one from a stranger? Emily didn't have time to process it because a voice sliced through the quiet. "Who gave you permission to enter this room?" Her stomach dropped. She turned. Alexander stood in the doorway, eyes blazing, not with anger but something more volatile. Fear, hurt, rage. I'm sorry," she whispered. "The door I told you this room was off limits." He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him with a soft final click. His breath shook slightly as he looked around the room, at Lydia frozen in the photos, at the gifts untouched, at the life preserved like a wound that never closed. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice cracking. Emily swallowed. "Because you're hurting and I can see it. This room, it's destroying you. You know nothing about what destroys me." She took a step toward him. "Then tell me." Alexander's jaw tightened, his eyes glistening with something raw. "I lost her," he said, "and I don't get to lose anyone else." Emily felt tears rise soft and aching. "You're not losing me." But he shook his head, eyes dropping to the necklace in her hand. "I can't do this," he whispered. "Not again." The air between them vibrated with things neither dared to say. Emily opened her mouth, but Alexander turned away sharply, gripping the edge of a table to steady himself. His voice was barely audible. "Leave this room, Emily. Please." It wasn't anger. It was a plea. A man begging not to break apart in front of someone who might matter. Emily stepped out slowly, her heart heavy, the key trembling in her palm. And as the door shut behind her, she realized she wasn't just witnessing Alexander's pain. She was becoming part of it. Alexander didn't move at first. He stood frozen in the doorway of the room she wasn't supposed to enter, his breathing uneven, his expression carved with panic he couldn't mask. Emily's heart hammered as she stepped back from the photographs, the untouched gifts, the necklace in her hands. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy," she whispered. "You opened the door," he said, voice hoarse. "You opened that door," Emily swallowed. "Because I needed to understand." "You don't need to understand anything." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once, twice, as though the room itself was suffocating him. "This is the only part of my life I can't let anyone touch." "Alexander, don't." He stopped her, not with anger but with fear. "Don't say my name in here." Emily looked around the room, the frozen memories, the dust-softened holiday scent, the sorrow pressed into every corner. "You've kept this place exactly the same for 3 years. He laughed once, bitter and hollow. "Because I deserve to wake up every day and see what I ruined." "You didn't ruin anything," she said gently. "You don't know that." A sharp breath escaped him. He sank onto the chair near the window, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. Emily hesitated, then walked over and sat across from him. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Please, tell me the truth." Alexander lowered his hands. His eyes were red, not from tears, but from years of exhaustion. "Her name was Lydia. We were engaged. She was supposed to spend Christmas with me." He paused. "She never made it to Christmas morning." Emily felt a twist in her chest. "Was there an accident?" "Yes," he said, voice tightening. "Indirectly my fault. A fight. She left the house upset. She said she wanted space. Then she disappeared before anyone could find her." Emily listened quietly, letting him speak. "I thought she'd come back," he continued. "But she didn't. And every day after I kept thinking, I pushed her away. I failed her. So I kept this room exactly as she left it because it's the only way I know how to remember her." Emily touched the arm of the chair gently. "Alexander, you can't keep punishing yourself forever." He looked up at her, truly looked, and for the first time she didn't see the cold, unreachable man. She saw the hurt inside him, wound deep and festering. "I'm not punishing myself," he said quietly. "I'm protecting everyone else, including you." The words stung. "Protecting me from what?" "From me." His voice cracked barely perceptibly. "Everyone I let close gets hurt." "Is that why you have all those rules?" she asked. He didn't deny it. Instead, he pressed his palms to his eyes again, trembling slightly. "I can't let myself care. I can't." "But you do," Emily said softly. "Last night, today, all of this. You do care." He flinched as if the truth struck harder than a slap. "I can't let myself." Emily moved closer, sinking to her knees so she was at eye level. "You're allowed to heal, Alexander. You don't have to stay frozen in this room." He turned his head sharply away, but she saw his jaw trembling. "Emily, leave." His voice was barely audible. "Please." She reached out gently, touching his hand. "I'm not afraid of your past. You should be." He pulled his hand back as though her touch burned. Hours later, Emily found him in the living room with a glass of whiskey, something she'd never seen him drink. His jacket was off, his collar undone, and he looked like a man inches away from falling apart. "Alexander," she said softly. He lifted the glass without looking at her. "Don't. Not tonight. You can't drink away everything you're feeling." "No," he said, eyes narrowing. "But it helps me forget what I can't have." The words hit her harder than she expected. "What do you mean?" she whispered. He finally met her eyes, raw, unguarded. "You." Emily froze. "Me. You're waking up a part of me. I buried with her," he said, standing unsteadily. "And I can't let that happen. I can't betray her memory, and I can't let history repeat itself." She stepped closer. "I'm not Lydia." "I know," he whispered. "That's why it scares me." Her breath hitched. "Why?" "Because I'm starting to feel again." He was inches away now, his breath warm with whiskey, his voice trembling. "And I don't know how to do this without breaking you too." Emily placed a gentle hand on his cheek. He leaned into it just barely before catching himself, pulling back sharply, as if the moment terrified him. "I can't," he whispered. "I can't go further than this." She swallowed. "Alexander?" If I cross that line, he said, shaking his head, everything I built to protect myself shatters. Emily's heart pounded. She didn't know what came over her courage, longing, desperation, but she stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his. Then let it shatter, she whispered. His breath trembled against her lips. He almost kissed her. Almost. But suddenly he jerked back, stumbling slightly. No, he rasped. I can't. I won't. He brushed past her, gripping the doorway for balance before staggering toward the staircase. Emily followed him halfway up, stopping when he collapsed against the banister. He looked back at her with eyes full of pain and something else she couldn't name. If you ever leave, he slurred, barely conscious at least be happy. For me. Then he closed his eyes and let Lucas guide him the rest of the way. Emily stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, the echo of his words circling her like snowflakes in a storm. He didn't say it like a man afraid to love again. He said it like a man already in love, terrified of it. Alexander sat at the dining table the next morning, a hand pressed against his forehead, the other gripping a piece of paper so tightly it threatened to tear. Emily hesitated in the doorway before stepping inside. He didn't look up. We crossed a line, he said, voice low and strained. Emily froze. Which line? He slid the paper across the table. Her contract. One line was circled in red ink, his handwriting sharp and unforgiving. Rule number 1. No emotional involvement, no love. Her chest tightened. Alexander. Last night you were drunk. You didn't, I remember enough. He finally met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely scared. This cannot happen. She swallowed. You mean we cannot happen? He didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. The rest of the morning passed in a fog. Emily wandered the halls feeling like a ghost in a house filled with memories that weren't hers. When she walked past Alexander's study, she caught a glimpse of him standing rigidly by the window, back turned, hands clasped behind him, as though bracing himself against emotions he didn't know how to control. She wanted to reach out. She didn't. She wasn't sure she was allowed to anymore. Later, while sorting paperwork in her temporary office, a folder slipped from a shelf and fell open on the floor. She bent down to collect it and froze. Inside was the original version of their contract. Rule number 1 was different. The typed line read only, maintain professional boundaries. But Alexander had crossed out the sentence and written in his own handwriting, do not fall in love. Her throat tightened. He had added that rule himself. Not for her, for him. A faint knock made her jump. Lucas stepped in, glancing at the scattered pages, but saying nothing. He's not handling this well, Lucas said quietly. Emily forced her voice steady. What exactly is he handling? Lucas hesitated. Something he thought he'd buried. And he left her there sitting alone with the truth she wasn't sure she wanted to understand. That evening, Emily found Alexander in the library staring at the unlit fireplace. The air felt heavy, as if weighed down by things left unsaid. We need to talk, she whispered. He shook his head. There's nothing to talk about. You say that, she said, stepping closer, but you're acting like you're terrified of your own feelings. His jaw clenched. Feelings get people hurt, or healed, not mine. Emily inhaled shakily. Last night was a mistake, he snapped, but his voice wavered. She flinched. Is that really what you think? That every moment we shared was a mistake? He turned away. Emily, you don't understand. Then explain it. He dragged a hand through his hair. You're not Lydia. I know that, but you remind me. He stopped breathing shallow. You remind me of everything I lost, everything I swore I would never let myself have again. Her heart ached at the truth he finally allowed himself to speak. Why are you fighting so hard against something that could be good? She asked. Because if I let myself care about you, he said, voice breaking, and something happens, I wouldn't survive it. Emily stepped closer, but he backed away. Please, he whispered, stop trying to save me. She shook her head. I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to reach you. But he didn't let her. He walked past her, leaving a cold trail in his wake. The next day brought more fuel to the fire. A scandalous headline circulated through the company, accusing Alexander of orchestrating a fake marriage to manipulate investor sentiment. Emily felt guilt twist in her stomach. This was her fault. Her presence had triggered chaos in his already fragile world. She found him in the study staring at the article with unreadable eyes. "I can help," she said softly. "Let me stand with you publicly. Let me support you." He didn't look up. "The more you help me, the worse this gets for both of us." "That's not true." "It is," he said, his voice suddenly raw. "The closer you get, the more dangerous this becomes." "For who?" she whispered. "For you." He finally lifted his eyes to hers, and the torment she saw there made her breath catch. That night, after hours of strained silence, she started up the stairs when his voice reached her. "Emily." She turned slowly. Alexander stood at the bottom of the staircase, the soft gold light outlining the exhaustion in his face. "What you feel," he said, grasping the railing. "I feel it too." Her breath stopped. He swallowed hard. "But it can't exist. It's forbidden." "I made it forbidden for a reason." Emily blinked back tears. "Then why tell me at all?" "Because lying would hurt more," he whispered. Then he walked away before she could take a single step towards him. Much later, unable to sleep, Emily wandered down the hall toward the forbidden room, but stopped when she saw something burning behind the glass doors of Alexander's office. She rushed forward. The contract. The edges curled and blackened as the flames consumed the page. Alexander stood over it, arms tense, watching it burn with a hollow emptiness. Emily stared at the final line visible before the fire devoured it. "Marriage ends on December 24th. Her heart cracked. He wasn't just afraid of loving her. He was preparing to let her go. Emily pressed a hand to her mouth, tears rising as the truth shattered through her. He was ending things not because he didn't feel something for her, but because he did. And that terrified him more than losing her. Emily stood before the mirror with her suitcase open on the bed behind, her hands trembling as she clasped the zipper shut. Her reflection stared back at her eyes, swollen breath, shallow heart, bruised by truth she couldn't unhear. Alexander's voice echoed relentlessly in her head. "This cannot exist. It ends on December 24th. I feel it too, but it's forbidden." Today was December 24th, and she refused to stay in a house where her heart was a bargaining chip in a battle she didn't ask for. She lifted the necklace from her collarbone, her mother's necklace, the one Alexander had stared at like it was a ghost, and placed it gently on the bedside table. The metal glinted in the dim morning light as though saying goodbye. Emily slipped a handwritten note beneath it. Then she picked up her suitcase and walked out. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. When she descended the grand staircase, the click of her heels echoed sharply against the marble floor. Alexander emerged from the hallway at the same moment. His eyes landed on the suitcase. He froze. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice too steady to be real. Emily drew in a breath. "I'm leaving." Alexander stepped closer, confusion breaking through his composure. "No, you're not. You said it yourself," she whispered. "This ends today. I'm just following your rules." He shook his head, jaw tightening. "That's not what I meant. You don't have to explain." She hugged her arms around herself. "I won't stay here only to pretend I'm not hurting. You told me it was forbidden to feel anything. I'm respecting that." Something like panic flickered in his eyes. "Emily," he said, voice low, "you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she replied. "You're holding on to a ghost, and I can't compete with that." His breath caught. "This isn't about Lydia." "Then what is it?" Emily asked, stepping closer despite the ache inside her. "Tell me why you're pushing me away." He hesitated, shoulders rising and falling with a breath he couldn't steady. But he said nothing, and that silence hurt more than any truth. Emily nodded faintly. "I should go." She stepped past him. He didn't stop her, not yet. On her way out, the housekeeper intercepted her at the door, eyes soft with concern. "My dear, you don't have to go like this." Emily tried to smile but failed. "He doesn't want me to stay." "That boy is terrified," the woman whispered, "terrified of losing again." Emily's chest tightened. "I can't heal him if he won't let me close." The woman squeezed her hands gently. Sometimes the wounded need to lose something twice before they realize they can't survive losing it again. Emily's throat closed painfully. "Then I guess this is the first loss." She stepped outside, letting the cold swallow her before she changed her mind. Snowflakes brushed her cheeks like soft frozen tears. She walked down the path alone. Upstairs, Alexander stood at his bedroom window watching her cross the driveway with her suitcase trailing behind her, each step pulling her farther from him. Something inside him cracked. He slammed his fist against the windowsill. "No!" Lucas appeared in the doorway, startled. "Sir, I can't let her go," Alexander said, voice shaking with a rawness Lucas hadn't heard since the day Lydia left. "Not her, not again." Lucas exhaled relief breaking over his face. Then, "Go after her." Alexander didn't waste another second. He ran. Emily dragged her suitcase through the snow-covered sidewalk, shivering as the wind bit through her coat. The city streets were alive with warm lights and festive music, but she felt painfully distant from the holiday magic. She walked toward the Christmas market she used to visit with her mother, the only place that ever made her feel safe. When she reached the glowing stalls and twinkling lights, she let out a shaky breath. Children laughed by the carousel. A choir sang near the fountain. Shoppers moved in cheerful clusters, unaware of the heartbreak circling her. She wrapped her coat tighter. Then she heard it. Someone calling her name. "Emily." She spun around. Alexander was running toward her, breath steaming in the winter air. Hair disheveled, coat half-buttoned, nothing like the composed man she'd known. He stopped in front of her chest, rising and falling, eyes wild with the fear of almost losing something vital. "You left," he breathed. "You told me to." He shook his head fiercely. "I was wrong." Emily blinked against the sting in her eyes. "You pushed me away. You told me this couldn't be anything." "I know," he whispered, stepping closer. "I thought rules would protect me. Protect you. I thought loving again would destroy everything." His voice cracked. "But losing you, that would destroy me more." Her breath hitched. "Alexander." "I'm done running," he said. "I'm done hiding behind the past." He reached for her hand, fingers trembling around hers. "You said I was holding on to a ghost," he continued. "But the truth is, I've been afraid of the living, afraid of feeling something real, afraid of losing someone He stopped himself, searching her face. Emily stared up at him, heart pounding. "Say it," she whispered. Alexander exhaled as though surrendering everything he'd been fighting. "I want you. I choose you. And if that means breaking every rule I ever made, then I'll break them." A tear slid down Emily's cheek. He brushed it away with a tenderness that stole her breath. "I'm sorry I let you walk away," he said. "But I'm here now, if you'll let me be." She didn't answer. She simply stepped into his arms. He held her tightly as snow drifted around them in shimmering flakes, the lights of the market casting them in gold. "Please don't disappear," he whispered. "Not you." "I'm right here," she murmured. "And I'm not going anywhere, unless you push me." "I won't," he promised. "Not again." He kissed her forehead gently. Then he noticed the necklace in her hand, the one she'd removed before leaving. His expression shifted. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. Emily hesitated. "My mother bought it, from a woman who looked lost. She said it was Christmas Eve, 3 years ago." Alexander's blood ran cold. "Emily," he murmured, voice barely audible. "What year was that?" She looked at him confused and answered. And Alexander's breath stopped entirely. Emily's answer hovered in the air like a fragile snowflake. 3 years ago, she said softly, "Christmas Eve. My mother bought it from a woman who looked scared, like she was running from something." Alexander's entire body went still. The bustling Christmas market blurred. The music, the lights, the laughter, all of it faded beneath the pounding in his ears. 3 years ago. Christmas Eve. A woman running. "Emily," he whispered, voice breaking. "That was the night Lydia disappeared." Emily's breath caught. "You think she sold this? But why would she? She was leaving," he said, remembering Lydia's note. Her trembling voice during their last argument, her pale face as she slipped out the door. She must have needed money, or wanted to get rid of something that tied her to me. His hand tightened around hers, grounding himself. "You said your mother described her as frightened." Emily nodded. "She told me the woman said one thing before handing it over." Alexander's eyes lifted, pleading. "What did she say?" Emily swallowed. She said, "Don't let anyone make you believe you're unworthy of love." The same words Lydia had written in his last Christmas card. his eyes closed, pain and clarity washing over him in equal measure. She didn't leave because of me. She left because she thought she wasn't enough. She left because she didn't know how to stay. And now Emily asked gently. He opened his eyes again, and for once, they weren't the cold steel she had first met. They were warm, human, alive. Now he whispered, I know what I want to hold on to. Snowflakes clung to his dark hair as he cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek tenderly. And it's you, Emily. You. She exhaled shakily. Are you sure I'm not her? I don't want her, he said. I want the woman who walked into my life with nothing but honesty and a broken suitcase and somehow thawed every part of me I thought was frozen forever. Her eyes glimmered. I didn't mean to. And I didn't mean to fall, he murmured, leaning his forehead against hers. But I did. The market lights blurred as he kissed her soft first, then deeper, a promise forming between them with every breath they shared. Snow swirled around them, like confetti laughter echoing carols drifting through the air. For the first time in 3 years, Alexander felt the world moving again, instead of standing still. When they finally pulled apart, Emily rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady grounding rhythm of his heartbeat. What now? She whispered. Alexander took her hand and placed something small and velvet soft into her palm. Emily opened it. A ring. Simple. Elegant. Real. Now, he said, we go home and start over. Without contracts, without rules, without ghosts. His voice softened. A real marriage. If you'll have me. Emily's eyes welled. I will. He kissed her again, laughter finally breaking free racing from his chest, a sound he hadn't made in years. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, but the Hale mansion no longer felt icy. The scent of cocoa filled the kitchen. Garland glittered on the banister. Emily hung the last ornament, and Alexander watched her with quiet awe, as though afraid to blink. She turned, smiling. Are you going to help decorate or just stare at me? He crossed the room, wrapping an arm around her waist. I'm helping by appreciating the view. Emily rolled her eyes, but her laugh carried warmth to every shadow of the house. Together they added the final piece to the tree, the star Alexander had kept in storage since Lydia left. He placed it gently in Emily's hands. Put it on, he said. I think this home is ready for light again. She climbed the small step stool and set the star into place. The tree glowed. So did Alexander standing beneath it. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the matching necklace, the one from the hidden room. No more secrets, he said, fastening it around her neck. Only beginnings. She leaned into him. Only beginnings. And as snow drifted quietly past the windows, they kissed beneath the tree, finally choosing a future unburdened by the past. Thank you for staying with Emily and Alexander until this final moment. If you want a part 2, more winter romance, more hidden pasts, more second chances, leave a comment below and tell me what scene you loved most. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Your support keeps these love stories alive.